90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Our special guest today is Anthony Agolia. He's an attorney, but he's also the Senior Director of International and Graduate Programs at the Fordham Law School in Manhattan. Anthony, welcome to Law You Should Know. We're going to talk about the many international and graduate law programs you oversee in a moment. But first, let's talk about the background and the history and founding of the Fordham Law School in Manhattan. What's the history of Fordham Law School?
Sure. Fordham Law has a really strong history and tradition in New York City. It's one of the oldest law schools in New York and around the country. We have several hundred years of history. In fact, we have alumni who are still practicing law today. Many have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who are Fordham lawyers today. It's a really special place. Of course, the main campus is in the Bronx, but the law school is at the Lincoln Center campus. So it's right across the street from the Center for Performing Arts. We have basically a full city block, I think the equivalent of probably 2 city blocks, if you were to count it up, with just a beautiful brand new law school building that Father McShane made happen for us before he recently stepped down. And Fordham just has a really special place in the history of New York City. And
you're just a few miles away from the heart of the legal community in Lower Manhattan, and
right.
You're within walking distance of many of the most prominent law firms in New York City where many of your graduates and alumni work.
Right, indeed. And that's one of the reasons why so many students from around the world, JD students mostly from the United States, from all over the country, want to study law at Fordham in New York City because of its strategic importance location-wise. But also, we have many foreign-trained lawyers who come to us, and I know we'll talk about that later, from all over the world to study in our LLM and SJD programs.
And for people who want to pursue a law degree on a part-time basis, you also have a very large evening program for someone who's working during the day or maybe is busy with family during the day, and they want to pursue law as a first or second career in the evening.
That's right, Ken. It's actually a very important part of what we do at Fordham Law School is supporting people who are working full-time, who want to become part-time law students. And in fact, we have one of the largest evening programs in the country. And we offer anywhere between 250 and 300 different sections of classes every single semester, which is a staggering number to pull off. And many of those sections are at 6 p.m. or later to accommodate the availability and schedules of our evening students.
And we'll talk later about some of the admissions criteria for all of these Fordham programs and how to obtain more information about attending Fordham Law School. But let's talk about some of the specialty programs that are found at Fordham Law School.
For the JD program, we have some of the most impressive nationally ranked programs around the country. We have Trial Advocacy Program, which ranks number 17 nationwide. Dispute Resolution, number 13. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later in relation to our centers and institutes and our LLM program. Business and Corporate Law is top 20. Criminal Law is top 20. Contracts, Commercial Law, top 20. International Law, which is something that my office focuses on, is number 21. IP, Tax Law, Con Law, all top 30. This is from U.S. News and World Report, Grad Compass 2023 edition. We also have practical legal education offerings that are really second to none. We have highly ranked clinics, which is a really important part of what we do, servicing the community. Our motto, by the way, at the university is in service to others. And so clinics really play a very important role in honoring that mission statement.
And so someone who's interested in Fordham can really major in any aspect of the law once they decide what aspects interest them.
Absolutely right. I mean, one of the advantages to going to such a large law school as part of a massive university is that you have this cadre of full-time faculty and alumni who basically can support all these centers and institutes that I can tell you about at the law school that basically correlate to 20 or so different practice areas. So most students, right, they come to their JD program. They're not exactly sure what kind of lawyer they want to be, what kind of practice area they want to focus on. First year JD curriculum is sort of standardized, just broad legal principles, common law principles. And then once you get into years 2 and 3 of the JD, you really start to focus on your specializations. And centers and institutes are a great way to demonstrate that interest, to network with practitioners who are practicing in those areas. And our students are, they do a great job of sort of integrating themselves into the broader New York City legal community through these centers.
And of course, taking classes that are some of the specialty classes that you offer may also helps a student get a job in that field.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one way to sort of separate yourself in a job search, is to sort of find a way to demonstrate not only your interest, but also your expertise through experiential learning during your JD or LLM studies, right? So if you can do an extern, let's say you want to be a criminal lawyer, do an externship at the district attorney's office or at a criminal defense firm, right? That's something that a lot of our LLM students do. Or do a clinic focused on criminal defense work. There's lots of different ways to sort of be a part of the center and institute focused on criminal law. There's a lot of different ways to sort of build experience.
And with that, you're going to work with real lawyers, you're going to work on real cases, and you may find you don't like that area of law. So it's better to find out while you're in law school so you can switch to something else.
100%. I mean, many lawyers, they change the sort of direction of their careers multiple times, as I'm sure you know better than most can, interviewing so many lawyers. So that's right. So it's a way to sort of figure it out and feel out a practice area to see if it's right for you.
Now, if someone is thinking of going to Fordham Law School, perhaps during the day, perhaps part-time in the evening, perhaps as a first or second career, what are some of the criteria that Fordham decides on which students to admit?
So, there's the sort of conventional metrics that I think any law school would look at, which would be your college, your academic performance in college, your undergrad degree, what you majored in, your GPA. Then, of course, there's something very specific to law schools, which is a horrible exam known as the LSAT, which is actually a pretty good predictor of performance in your JD studies. But it's becoming a little bit more controversial. So some law schools are choosing not to require the LSAT. Fordham still looks at the LSAT scores. It's a very competitive school. I think the median LSAT score right now is 163 to 167, which is a pretty high score. GPAs have to be pretty high too, but the law school also has sort of a very inclusive philosophy where, they're going to look at the big picture. LSAT scores, GPA, they're going to always play a part, but we're also focused on diversity, on finding interesting and capable future lawyers. So we're going to look at prior employment. We're going to look at student activities, especially because of our motto. We're going to focus on service to the community, leadership skills, public service, history or interest in it, and of course, communication skills.
And is it a little easier to get into the evening program than the day program? Or do you look at other criteria, say what you've accomplished in business or something along those lines?
I hesitate to speak to that, Ken, because I don't work directly on JD admissions, but I would imagine that they have a slightly different set of criteria that they're looking at in the evening program because sort of by definition, it's a little bit more experienced, older population that's applying for that.
So you offer lots of majors and you're trying to offer as many opportunities for someone to obtain a JD if that's their goal.
Absolutely. I mean, diversity is one of those things that we have really sort of focused on over the past 7 years since I've been at Fordham Law School. And I think there's an understanding that people from non-traditional backgrounds can bring a lot to the table. So conventional metrics don't always help you identify the best law student or the best lawyer. You have to really look beyond what's black and white on a piece of paper.
And there may be other competencies out there and skills more important than your score on LSAT.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was a first-year JD student, I had a lot of older students in my first-year section, and they brought a lot of perspective to the table. I had just gotten my bachelor's degree in philosophy. I knew nothing about the real world. They were coming in with incredible amounts of practical experience, and they contributed to those classroom conversations in a variety of ways that I never could.
Because you are strategizing, you're negotiating, you're deal making, and those might be skills you learned in the real world and not for a test.
100%.
I just want to remind the listeners, you're listening to Law You Should Know. We're talking with Anthony Agolia. He's an attorney, and he's also the Senior Director of International and Graduate Programs at the Fordham Law School. And we're going to focus now on those programs. You're listening to Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nass Community College in Garden City, New York. And if you want to listen to this program again or tell someone else about it, just listen to the podcast at nccradio.org. So, Anthony, you oversee a number of programs, unique programs to Fordham Law School, including the LLM program, the Master Study of Law program, and the SJD programs. Tell us about those programs and what students learn and who those students are and how they can be of help to them.
So the LLM, of that three, that is the oldest and I'd say the probably most well-established of the three programs. The LLM is a second law degree. Some, U.S. JD holders decide to get an LLM degree, particularly in an area like tax law, for example. Traditionally, though, at least historically at Fordham, most of the LLM students who have come through our doors are foreign-trained lawyers who come to us mostly from civil law countries, but also, of course, there's some who come to us from common law jurisdictions. And that latter group, interestingly enough, we were just talking before the show started about how some foreign-trained lawyers from the UK, for example, they can just sit for the New York bar exam without an LLM. But for most of the world, the civil law countries, if they want to sit for the New York bar exam, they need an LLM from U.S. Law School first. So it's a gateway to the to the New York bar.
And it's a streamlined, shorter version than going to 3 years of law school. It's normally a year or two.
Yeah, it's a 1-year program for full-time students. You knock it out in 2 semesters. We have a very robust orientation program, which I think is really important to sort of get them ready to learn about the common law system. Ken, I don't know if you know this, but the U.S. common law system is weird, especially from the perspective of an attorney coming from a civil law country where you have a code. It's not really built around case law and judicial opinions. The way we do, we are the weird ones. Most of the world does it the other way, following a civil law code.
And they've been around longer than us.
That's right. Okay. So they come to us and we're the oddity.
But this helps keep lawyers employed. So they can go back to their home country and they'll be qualified to be admitted to the New York bar and perhaps the bar of other states once they pass the bar exam, and they'll have a leg up back in their home country.
Absolutely. It's a huge competitive advantage for those of our graduates who decide to take their newly minted LLM degrees from Fordham and from our other wonderful schools in New York and around the country back home to sort of hold out expertise in U.S. common law, in New York law specifically. As you know, they need to take both the uniform bar exam, focused on general common law principles, but also the New York law course and New York law exam, which means that they understand, sort of the intricacies of New York specific law. And many of them, they work for international firms.
And if they want to stay in the U.S., they still have their unique education and perspective from abroad that they bring to a law firm in the United States or some kind of legal position or business position in the United States.
That's right. I mean, they can be very attractive depending on how much experience they have prior to their LLM. They can be very attractive to U.S. firms who have an international desk, right? And so there is sort of a niche market for French LLM students, for example, coming to New York and entering the job market and really just sort of strategically focusing in their job search on firms that have a French desk or want to have a French desk, right? Having that dual bar eligibility makes them sort of a rare breed and highly coveted in the job market. And
it's not just a job in France. I mean, the UN also uses French, and there are more countries in the world that speak French than any other language.
That's right. I mean, France is a special example, but I think it's generally true across the board, certainly for most of the countries in Europe.
And let's talk about what some of the students learn in the programs that you oversee, how that integrates and complements their legal background and education and what they learn in your program, and then we'll talk later about how they use it in the real world.
Sure. So if they're foreign-trained LLM students, they're going to start with a wonderful course taught by my dear friend and colleague, Tony Yeager-Fine, who I know you've had on the show before, Ken, which is an introduction to the U.S. legal system. It's taught intensively during our orientation program, which I told you about before. It's almost 2 full weeks of jam-packed content. A lot of it is that intro course, and it's basically transitioning a civil lawyer and sort of helping them make that adjustment to a common law legal system, teaching them how to read and brief cases, teaching them how to sort of think about things in the adversarial system that we have. Our system is unique for a number of reasons, not just the common versus civil law thing. It's also the adversarial nature of our system that sort of makes us different.
And the role of judges and juries, which may be different than in other countries.
Very, very different. Like the right to a jury is not a well-established principle in the broad sense that we understand it here in the United States. That's not a thing around the world. Like we are, again, that's another example of how we are the weird ones. We're the odd ones. So helping these foreign trained lawyers, many of them are very well accomplished. It's hard to sort of to help them make that transition from what they know so well to something totally foreign and alien. Once they're out of that intro course, they have their foundational knowledge. That course ends early on in their first semester. And then we teach them legal writing and research. Quantitative methods is one of our newest graduation requirements. We have fundamental lawyering skills, which is we could talk about simulation courses later, experiential courses. They're now all the rage in U.S. legal education. They didn't exist really when I was a JD student, and not when you were a JD student, I'm assuming. And then they move into their concentration courses, right? We have 9 different LLM concentrations to choose from. We could talk about those later if you want. And that's when that's what they're here for, right? They want to be banking lawyers. They want to be international business lawyers. They want to go into corporate compliance or fashion law. They want to be international human rights lawyers. We have programs to accommodate all of those interests and goals.
And these would be valuable skills in international dealings or in diplomacy or things along that line.
Yeah, I mean, all of the above.
And just as American law schools are teaching students a way to think and write and resolve problems and litigate if necessary, you're giving those students in your LLM program similar skills.
That's right. We're doing it in 2 semesters, and it is not easy to do. Look, what we're doing is complementing their civil law education from outside the U.S. or common law education from outside the U.S. With 2 semesters of really, really intense U.S. common law training. And that gets them pretty much on the same level as the JD students by the time they graduate. There's certain things, they're not going to be native English speakers most of the time. So there's things that make it a challenge for them. But our students have been, they've blown my mind, honestly, Ken. In the 7 years I've been at Fordham, I think to myself, could I go to Italy and earn an LLB and a master's degree to become an Italian-trained lawyer? I don't know if I could do that. I mean, the amount of courage and grit it takes to do what our students do every semester, it's
and
remarkable.
Those foreign bar associations are probably not going to let you in so easily.
Yes,
they don't want to be overrun by the New York lawyers.
We're fortunate to be in New York, where we have most states, by the way, Ken, they don't let foreign-trained LLM students sit for their bar exams.
And they don't want New York lawyers to sit for their bar exams either.
Yes, I've seen my cousin Vinny. I've heard the stories.
Yeah, every state has their own unique rules, but New York is an international community and exciting place to be. Anything else you want to mention about the concentrations available?
Sure. So let me see if I can name all 9 off the top of my head. We have banking, corporate, and finance law. We have corporate compliance, which is one of our newest and most popular programs. We have that online and in person, by the way. We have fashion law, international business and trade law, international dispute resolution. We have intellectual property and information technology. We have real estate law. We have a U.S. law concentration, which is sort of just a general LLM, but you're not really studying international law. You're just focused on domestic law. I think that's all of them. I don't know if that's
and this is especially important as we've become more of an international business community over the last 10, 20, 50 years. Right. And so companies have presence all over around the world. They're dealing with products and workforces from all over the world as well.
Oh, 100%. I mean, as the globe becomes more and more interconnected, and this has been going on for many, many decades, the need for lawyers who can sort of transition back and forth from U.S. to other countries' legal systems is incredibly valuable.
I would just like to remind our listeners we're talking with Anthony Agolia. He's an attorney, and he's also the Senior Director of the International and Graduate Programs at the Fordham Law School, as you've heard, located in Manhattan, but with programs reaching all over the world and lawyers from all over the world. You're listening to Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. If you missed any portion of this program or you'd like to tell someone else about it, please go to the podcast at nccradio.org. So you've told us about who attends your program, some of the things they learn. Now tell us a little bit about what they go on to do with all this training and experience.
Sure. So,
and how you help them get there.
Of course. So before I answer that, let me just mention we also have this MSL program for non-lawyers. We have two concentrations, corporate compliance and fashion law. And that's a really important part of what we do as well in our office. But so look,
and that is for someone who's a business person or a non-lawyer in the U.S., but want to know about law, not to be a lawyer,
right,
but to just understand the world of law and how it interacts with their business world.
Yeah, so in corporate compliance, it's really interesting. We have compliance officers and people in related positions who are sort of established already in the compliance space who are looking to level up, right? So we have some really impressive compliance professionals. It's mostly an evening part-time program. Most of our students are online in that program, together with our online LLM compliance students. And so those people, they have gone on to take their Fordham master's degrees in compliance and really just move up, the corporate ladder and take on senior level roles.
And it's going to give them a strong background so they can deal with lawyers, deal with government agencies, resolve problems, and help their departments grow.
That's right. I mean, historically, compliance professionals have not had legal education. They have not had formal legal training. It's something that they sort of learned on the job. And over time, I think people in the industry recognize that there was a lot of value in bringing in, not necessarily lawyers, although lots of JD and LLM graduates move into that profession as well. But a master's degree from a law school, it's 30 credits. So it's 2 semesters full time if you want to do it that quickly.
And very briefly, what are they learning in that program?
They're learning all the basics of how to run a compliance program. So, our program is mostly focused, I want to say, on financial institutions. So they're going to understand sort of the regulations that are very important for the financial services industry. They're going to learn best practices that are broadly applicable, I think, for compliance professionals. We have a lot of students who come to us from an HR background. We have a lot of in-house counsel are interested in corporate compliance because they end up basically being compliance officers for the companies that they serve.
So it gives them the background they don't have because they don't have an MBA and they don't have other master's degrees outside the law.
I think that's right. I think that's the appeal to someone who already has a law degree, right?
And for people who don't have the law degree, is this giving them a legal background as well? They're learning analytical skills. They learn some practical law skills, dispute resolution or discovery.
That's exactly right. And in fact, we're expanding our MSL program. We're moving into the space where you can sort of get a general MSL. We haven't rolled this out to the public yet, but we're seeking the necessary approvals to offer what we call right now general MSL, which is sort of a broad legal education for a non-lawyer who is working in business and recognizes that there's sort of value in understanding the basics of the U.S. legal system.
So, Anthony, if anyone here or around the world wants more information on the programs, maybe they're interested, they know someone who's interested, maybe their child, their coworker, how can they find out more about the various programs at the Fordham Law School that you've told us about? Sure,
yeah. So just go to fordham.edu, and once you're at the homepage, you can look for the academics tab, and you can find us under the law school and then undergraduate programs. That's where you'll find the LLM, MSL, and SJD programs. The SJD, by the way, is a research doctorate, basically a PhD in law, and you need to, for the most part, you need an LLM to even apply for that. So that's for folks who want to become, serious academics and legal scholars.
If they are interested, can they visit the school? Can they speak to alumni? Can they get an evaluation as to whether this kind of program will help them get to the next level?
Sure. So I know that on the JD side, they have lots of in-person programming. There's tours available. On our side, for the graduate programs, we hold informational sessions because we have so many foreign trained students, Ken. We hold informational sessions, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 of them every year remotely via Zoom. So if you just reach out to our office, we can send you a link to the next upcoming informational session. I think actually we have one coming up next month.
And there's also, if they want to visit the school or find out more about it, there's plenty of opportunities to do that.
Absolutely.
What other things would you like people to know about the various international and graduate programs that you offer at the Fordham Law School?
I guess I just want to give a shout out to the fact that the university, that the law school specifically, has been moving into this online space recently. And, we're viewing this as an opportunity to sort of spread the Fordham brand even more globally than it already is. So historically, the Fordham brand moved outside of the borders of the U.S. when we had a student who came to us, right, to study, and now we can go to them.
So it's almost that the student abroad can stay close but go far.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we've already established our online LLM and corporate compliance. We have our very first online LLM student graduating this May, who I'm very, very excited for. And we have another 5 or 6 in the pipeline who will graduate next year.
And what do these students say about their experience? Coming from a foreign country, doing this intense experience to help them qualify to be a lawyer in New York, or just get that background in American law?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Ken. I mean, first of all, they're a deer in headlights when they first get here, and that's totally understandable. My job is, as the person who runs the LLM program, is to help students transition into a comfortable place, and they never really get a chance to be comfortable. If you think back to your first year of your JD studies, Ken, were you ever really comfortable your first year of law school? I certainly wasn't. I started to get comfortable in years 2 and 3. And so what these people do is, they immerse themselves in a new culture, in a new legal system, and they impress us all every day. And what they do is they go on to get these amazing jobs in New York and around the world.
And you're their guide to making transition from law outside the U.S. to American law.
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing that I do every day, Ken, is, I am sort of the academic advisor, the friend, the crisis counselor, the hotline, all those things, and it's the best part about my job.
And for long after they graduate as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have lots of friends out there from around the world. Whenever our office travels, we have an alumni reunion, a European alumni reunion every summer. We're going to Paris in June. And much to the delight of my wife, I should add. And we're going to have our alumni converging from around the world to join us in Paris.
And actually, you probably have information sessions around the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And just want to remind our listeners, we're talking with Anthony Agolia. He's the Senior Director of International and Graduate Programs at the Fordham Law School. He's also told us about the traditional JD programs, both day and evening. And Anthony, just give us the website again for the law school.
Sure. That's fordham.edu, fordham.edu.
And no question is too simple or too unusual. Whatever questions or concerns they have, you'll try to address them to see if Fordham, whether they're JD program or these unique graduate programs are the right option for their next career move.
Absolutely. And let me just share my email address in case anyone wants to reach out directly. It's aagolia@fordham.edu. That's aagolia@fordham.edu.
And just list it one more time.
aagolia@fordham.edu.
Okay, would like to thank Anthony Agolia for being our guest on Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, Long Island, New York. If you missed any part of this program or you want to tell someone else about it, just go to the WHPC website at nccradio.org, and please join us next week at this same time for another program on Law You Should Know.